Hi, and welcome to the Climate and Environmental Justice Series, a capstone project of the 2022 Ohio Environmental Council Leadership Initiative. My name is Brittany, and I'm joined today with my fellow cohorts, Andrew and Bailey. In this session, we'll give you a one-on-one introduction to understanding the basics of climate injustices in your community. We'll be focusing primarily on three main topics. The first one being, what is climate justice? Where we will define what the term actually means, and then we'll talk about the impacts that climate injustices have on our communities. We'll learn how to analyze our own environments and identify how climate injustices show up. And then we'll talk about the ways that you can take climate action and understanding your role in improving climate injustices in your community. Now, to get us started, Andrew will kick us off.
Thank you very much, Britt. So climate justice, as a definition, we're looking at the concept that addresses the just division, fair sharing, and equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens of climate change and responsibilities to deal with that climate change. Okay, so some of the definitions that I think are particularly important when we're talking about climate justice. Intersectionality, Bailey's going to talk about that a little bit more in her section. Equity, which is a little bit different from equality, and it's important to make those distinctions when we're in this space. Climate disasters, that's anything from a heat wave on to cold snaps, anything like that can all be classified as a climate disaster. Decoupling is an interesting concept where we separate growth separate economic growth from growth in emissions. So that's something to and then here we have a list of some of the topics around climate justice that can be more approachable without necessarily polarizing your audience, depending on who you're speaking to. There is a certain ability for some words to cause people to shut down and stop intaking any new information. So these are some of the ways that I have found useful in getting people to take a second listen to what you have to say, especially around climate change. And here we have a brief history of environmental justice in the U.S., which is similar to climate justice, but just a hair different. This goes from the early 1980s and late 1970s into the Trump era in 2017. You are able to follow the QR code to a video that explains this as well. But it's just a quick way to get used to talking about the history of climate justice. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton off to Bailey.
Thank you, Andrew. So as Andrew was sharing, climate injustice is intersectional. It looks at those who have done the least to contribute to climate change often face the greatest burdens and the highest risks due to climate inaction. Other identities such as your socioeconomic status, your racial identity, what neighborhood you live in, all play a role in how much climate change is showing up in your day-to-day life. Next slide. When we're looking at the key factors of climate injustice, we look at who's impacted differently and at the greatest harm. We look at how that impacts additional inequities that communities are facing. And we look at the reality that momentum is building for solutions and how can we center those most impacted in those solutions. Every day across the state, Ohioans face compounded injustices due to climate change. And we're here today to recognize the role that climate change shows up in our neighborhoods and how we have the ability to impact the solutions that are needed in each community. Some of the examples we'll be looking at are proximity to polluting sites, the increase of health conditions related to climate change, exposure to high heat waves and low air quality, utility burden that communities are facing. And in a later session, we'll also be exploring food injustice more fully. This is not an exhaustive list, and we know that other factors such as housing, littering, illegal dumping, and so many other experiences of climate injustice that communities face aren't going to be covered in the scope of this session. So know that this is some examples, but it's not exhaustive by any means. One of the #1 concerns we look at in climate injustice in the state of Ohio is who has the greatest proximity to polluting plants and toxic sites. Throughout the state of Ohio, there are several Superfund or federally recognized toxic sites, as well as other polluting sources that need to be addressed. Those who live in the closest proximity to these polluting parties are often low income and Black communities that are living in near proximity due to the history of redlining and other racist housing policies that have resulted in this unjust distribution of polluting air. One example is in our Cleveland community, which we can explore further in the slides. Another injustice that Ohioans are facing are increases in climate change related health conditions, such as respiratory concerns due to polluted airways and water. If you look at some of the statistics in Ohio, we see that in particular, Black Americans are experiencing the highest risk for respiratory illnesses such as childhood asthma, which impacts the long-term health and well-being of community members. We also see that as air quality decreases, community members have less access to enjoy the outdoors, are less mobile and less able to socialize, and those who work outside are experiencing increased health conditions as well. We see this most prominently in our urban spaces, which are our most racially diverse. And in the United States, there are 3 Ohio cities that are among the top most challenging places to live with asthma. We also see that our heat waves have a negative impact on our community members and are directly related to climate change, and that those that live in urban spaces and those that have the least access to air conditioning and high quality housing are most impacted by the heat waves. This results in illness as well as losing out on income for not being able to go to work and students not being able to attend school. We also see that the increase in heat waves and in extreme temperatures has resulted in high utility costs and high rates of shutoff that disproportionately impact Black and low-income community members across the state of Ohio. And we know that the outcomes of losing utility have both financial and long-term housing impacts, as well as impact our ability to navigate day-to-day life and be able to communicate with our neighbors and our healthcare providers and our employers. One example of that was in Columbus, Ohio, in which we saw a disproportionate number of Black Columbus residents who experienced shutoffs and as a result are experiencing bankruptcy due to the loss of income and the loss of utilities. As the climate increases, we experience higher temperatures and extreme ice and cold, which results in unsafe living conditions as well as economic loss. I'm going to hand it off to Britt, and she'll talk more about why, even though the challenges we face are great, that everybody has a role and everybody can contribute to climate solutions.
Yes, thank you, Bailey, so much. So as you can tell, climate injustices are very present in our Ohio communities. And while it's important for us to identify these problems, we also need to take action in pushing forward solutions. And climate action is essential to addressing the injustices that directly affect our communities, things like eradicating poverty, ensuring clean water, and addressing health disparities among underrepresented groups and other causes. Next slide. So the role that we as regular residents can play is just to support the actions that not only slow the effects of climate change, but also addresses the injustices that we know are present in our communities. Next slide. So how can you take climate action? The first way you can take climate action is by just participating in your community. You can also advocate for a cause and then create lifestyle changes as well. Next slide. For community participation, we encourage you to connect with your neighbors and join in on the community events and activities that support and improve the quality of life and social well-being within the neighborhood. Next slide. If you're interested in getting involved in a specific issue or topic, I recommend visiting the website gogreengo.org. Through this site, you can put in your location and even a specific interest, such as air quality or environmental injustice, and you'll find various environmental and climate groups that you may not have known that are right in your community. Next slide. Another way to take climate action is by telling your lawmakers. This is probably the most easiest way to voicing your concerns and asking for solutions from the people that make the decisions that directly affect you. And also just educating yourself on the topics that matter most to you, and then transferring that knowledge to your neighbors and community members as well. Next. So taking climate action and addressing injustices doesn't have to be something big. Every small change that you make has an impact. You can make small changes to your lifestyle at home, at work, and in the community. Things like taking biking, or things like biking or walking to work just once a week will not only help save money, but also reduce your carbon footprint, which on a larger scale will help us reduce air pollution and health disparities within our communities. Next, lastly, however you decide to make an impact, all that matters is that you take action to addressing the injustices that you see. I would encourage you to also check out our other video in this series titled Advocacy in Your Community, where we'll further discuss the many ways that you can take action.
So that concludes the first portion of our presentation through the slide deck. Now we are very thankful to be visited by Demetrius Carter, who is going to shine some additional light on some of the topics that we've been speaking about and share his individual perspective on climate justice as well. I guess to the presentation, we are the Ohio Environmental Leadership Initiative's first cohort. We are just a group of young professionals attempting to increase our knowledge and understanding of the environmental movement in Ohio. And so I guess just a quick round of introductions, right? So I'm Andrew Linebarger, currently a data analyst at the Recycling Partnership, and my primary topic of interest around sustainability is just making sure that we're all aware of the three pillars: people, planet, and profit. A lot of times the people gets dropped off of there, so that's a really important for me. And I'll pass the baton. Let's try Bailey.
Hey y'all, I'm Bailey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a community social worker and researcher on ecological grief here in Central Ohio, and I'll pass it on to Brett.
Hi, I'm Brittany Montgomery. I am the Sustainability and Communications Administrator for the City of Cleveland in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. My main interest is to bring awareness and education to the residents that need it most surrounding climate issues. And now I would like to introduce our speaker, Demetrius Carter. If you can just quickly tell us about yourself and some of the things that you're working on.
I would be glad to, thank you. So my name is Demetrius Carter, and I am a Cleveland Circular Ambassador. I am an ambassador for the Central and the Huff community. I got chose to do 2 communities because at the time I was living inside of the Huff community, so it made sense for me to do that. But I also have a strong connection within the Central community because I'm from the Central community. I went to the first anti-Gardena elementary school within the Garden Valley projects, and now I'm playing both roles in the Central and the Huff community. But now I live in the Collinwood community, so I'm also helping the Collinwood ambassador out with anything that she may need as much as I can. And then I'm also a Central Promise ambassador, and that's through the the I Can initiative, or I could be getting that wrong, excuse me, but I know St. Vincent's, the Sisters of St. Charity, they are a really good, they're just really strong within that realm of helping us out in the Central community. So, and right now what I'm trying to do is essentially teach and learn what the residents in the Central, Collinwood, and Huff, and the whole city of Cleveland, honestly, what they would like to happen on an ecological standpoint for the environment, and also teach them, the things that I know, and what ways we can reduce here and there, and how we can become a better community and help become a better city.
That's great. So to kick off our first question, I guess, can you tell us what do you believe are some of the greatest climate injustices also in your community, but maybe also through the state of Ohio?
For sure. Definitely in my community, and I can probably say it goes across the state of Ohio. Littering is probably one of the biggest climate injustices that I see. You can say littering and illegal dumping, uselessness of properties or lands that we have. That's, I feel like, a climate injustice, because you just get these lots of weeds, and it doesn't look, it's not good. It can be utilized for other things. And another climate injustice, I would probably say, I'm not sure if this is a direct line. I feel like it should be, but the cleanliness of our lake, and trying to find some great way to make sure that we have an eco-friendly, clean, water system as far as we can do.
Excellent. I'll hop in with the next question here. So what actions do you think Ohioans can take to meet some of these challenges?
So the first action that I think that we should take, for at least for the illegal dumping and littering, is just the promotion of obviously recycling, or just throwing your trash away. I know it's like on McDonald's and stuff like that. It might be on your food, but it's not actually talked about. No one in the store says, make sure you throw your trash away, or, it should be a very common sense thing, but maybe like sometimes we have to, get somebody's attention again for the thing that they may be doing. And I think it becomes second nature to people when they throw things on the ground. They kind of forget that they're just doing whatever, and they forget that ends up, to a place that could potentially be harmful for another being. And so the awareness of why we really shouldn't be doing it, and I guess the increasing, like a better policy for littering. Like cities should be, I don't know if the states can find cities as a whole for their collective, like if you go around and you see the amount of trash that is on the ground versus in the trash being collected, and maybe find the city for doing that, and then increasing, I don't know, but I feel like that's one way, or could be a good idea. And for the vacant lots, that's something that Circular Cleveland is about, or the Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, and a lot of other organizations as well. That's important to say, because we want to turn those into gardens, nice green spaces, or something else that can be useful for the residents in that area that they're at. Like not everybody might not need a garden, but somebody might need a grocery store, or somebody might need a baby store, or there's can be things that can be very useful that the community doesn't have, but they need it.
On that topic, going back to things that communities need but that don't necessarily have, even where I live in Cleveland Heights right now, and directly related to litter, it's a lot cleaner now, because we've placed bins, rollout bins for folks to use to set their trash out. Because before that, you had to set everything out in bags like the morning of, and even still, that's kind of an attraction for pests, mainly raccoons, and so you'd have clouds of litter on the streets, which wasn't intentional, but it was an unintended consequence of not having an infrastructure that was, I guess, as robust as others.
Demetrius, can you share at all about why Ohioans should care about climate action? A lot of folks feel like climate change is big and far away. Can you share a little bit more about why it's important for individuals to participate and be involved in climate action?
Absolutely. I first and foremost, I'm not a religious person, but I'm very spiritual, and I feel like that's important for me to say, and it's fair for me to say. cleanliness is next to godliness. So that's really important because we spend so much time here, or whether or not you believe it's a lot of time with, friends and family and things like that. We want to make sure that it can keep going, right? It can be passed on to generations, and we can be teaching, our future leaders about why it's important that we are composting or we make sure that we reuse what we have, we give back and things of that nature. That's important because it creates a better sense of community. It creates better cities. It creates a whole better world at the end of the day. Like when we're thinking about not throwing the things on the ground versus putting them in the trash can and make sure they go to their proper place. And we're thinking about why we should be, helping our neighbor out with, I don't know, something as small as whatever, I don't know, something that they may need that relates to, like maybe they need a ride somewhere and they don't have a ride to get somewhere, and you can help them out that way. But we have already these great ways. We're doing solar efficient things with solar panels. We also have some wind energy things going on in Cleveland. We keep those things going up. That's also good for our economy. In a sense, we're creating new jobs, and also the education in general around our environment is happening. That's not a topic in school. We don't have an environmental education department nowhere in like early schools. So that can be a whole nother realm of thing that can maybe increase the amount of teachers that we have, because they're like, oh, I want to teach about just the community, just the environment that the student may be readily in, and how they can make that better. And also what's accessible, how you can get to, like, a lot of people don't realize that we have these metro parks that are really beautiful to go to. And when you go into the metro parks, you'll see like how you kind of want more of the world to be. Like you'll be like, oh, that's like so nice. It's so peaceful here, right? And a lot of people don't know they have easily accessible ways to get there, or more people aren't trying to get there, right? And that's not I can't say it's a bad thing that people aren't going to the metro parks, but I can say it at the same time too, because it's like, what are you doing, or what could you be doing differently if you were at a metro park versus, I don't know, driving around all day for no reason. A lot of people waste gas just going nowhere. There's a lot of reasons to care about the environment. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was a fantastic answer. So I guess I kind of have a follow-up question. So what are some of the ways that residents can take action in their community?
I want to talk about water and the importance of that, like the cleanliness of water, because I see a lot of people, buying water bottles. I think a lot of people can buy reusable water bottles more and actually use them. That's a really quick, simple, effective way to not purchase water bottles from the store, right? Or if you're afraid to drink in the tap water, you can get a filter. You buy a filter. That's important for you, right? You don't want to drink the tap, so you don't spend, I don't know, a case of water is probably like $3. Some people probably buy two a month, so you're probably spending $6 or something. I don't want to do the math here, but it's way cheaper for you to buy a filtration system than it is for you to continue to go back and buy water bottles. That's one way. Another way is just by being an open-minded person. You don't have to necessarily only come and have this big interest for a circular economy. No, but we want you to have this interest in creating a better community and, having better relationships with the people that surround you. I feel like that's not a thing that we have nowadays. A lot of people are kind of distant, and that could be due to COVID, but it also could be due to other things as well. But want to have a sense of community. That's what we really should be doing.
So and you talked about this a little bit earlier, but what really motivates you in being an active resident within your community?
Sure, for sure. So my name Demetrius, that comes from a Greek god and our goddess Demeter, and they're the earth lover or the earth protector. I like to talk about my name because it fits so well with what I do or what I want to do, right? And also, I just grew up kind of seeing, a lot of negativity about the environment. You mentioned Captain Planet on your background, right? I used to watch Captain Planet all the time, and I used to be like, hey, like, I want to be a Planeteer. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm trying to save the world. Like, that's what I want to do, right? I don't know what pollution is necessarily. So I'm in the inner city, and I'm the only one probably raving about Captain Planet and how cool it is, right? And so I wanted to continue to carry that. That motivated me, being from a community where not a lot of people talk about the environment at all. And that's what it is. Like, why aren't we talking about the environment within our community? And it's maybe a multitude of reasons. I won't go into that. That's a really deep issue. But we should be caring about the environment. That's what motivates me. The lack of caring about the environment motivates me to want to teach people more about, what is out there. What can you bring to yourself? Like how easy it is to bring a piece of the environment to you.
Sounds great. Let's end with the question. We know that if we don't act and take climate action, then it'll be those with oppressed identities that feel the impact of climate change the hardest and the fastest. Demetrius, can you share at all about why it's important to have Black, Indigenous, and people of color as leaders in the environmental movement?
I feel like it's important for every culture, every race to care about the environmental movement, especially the Black one, the Black race, because it's something that we haven't really discussed or talked about in the past, mostly because we were trying to get out of our own other things that were going on in our past. But now this is kind of our biggest, this is one of our biggest injustices. One of our biggest injustices is the environmental injustice, because in our communities, in inner city communities, or anywhere where it's kind of like a higher Black population, you kind of see a whole different thing of what's pushed and what's marketed there, versus if you go inside of suburban communities, what you see that's marketed there and how they clean up after themselves. And we haven't put our nose into as much. And maybe it's because we never felt like we had a say so, but now I feel like more of us feel like we do have a say so about what's going on in our environment. So now we want to step up. But it's a little bit difficult because we have a lot of things that teach us not to talk about that. And we pay attention to a lot of things that kind of don't address that. So we have to rewire ourselves to start approaching that direction. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen, within, the next 5 years necessarily, where we're all doing it as a collective. But I feel like that's a strong possibility of all of us doing it and having a better attitude about it within the next 10 years, for sure. I can say that. And I just think that just comes with slowly but for surely teaching people and keeping them engaged with it and making it purposeful for them. That's where I stand.
All right. Thank you so much, Demetrius. It's been a joy having you today. We really appreciate you and all of your wonderful answers. And I just want to say I loved your Captain America reference because I tried to have my nephew watch it and he was like, "What is this, Auntie Britt?" So, but thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for joining us for this presentation into the entire Ohio Environmental Leaders Initiative cohort. Please check out the additional sessions that are coming from our cohort. We also want to thank the Ohio Environmental Council and the Black Environmental Leaders Association for their support and guidance through this project. Please follow their websites and their social medias to see additional opportunities to connect and be involved in your community taking climate action.